Real quick, just stepping in to remind everyone that I have a movie channel. Check out my movie channel if you want. It's Jackson Kruger Movies. The link is in the description below, so if you're tired of just hearing my bad sports takes and want to also hear some bad movie takes, make sure you check that out. Again, link is in the description below. Kadarious Toney was a very hyped up draft prospect when he was drafted in the first round by the New York Giants. In fact, I heard somebody even had him as their number one wide receiver in that draft class. That's crazy, right? Who could that have been? What a weird take that must have been. But in all seriousness, he was a consensus first round pick, and many thought he was going to be really successful. And when you watch the film, you can easily see why. His college tape was littered with plays like this one, where it's a 3rd down and 9, and you see Toney is in a one-on-one matchup as a slot receiver right here. When this play begins, Toney is going to fake as though it goes towards the outside, but when he cuts over the middle, look at how turned around that South Carolina corner is. I mean, he's literally facing the wrong way. He's literally turned around right here. The ball does get to Kadarious Toney, who is able to accelerate past the corner that was supposed to cover him, gets to this point where surely you're thinking the play is about to be dead. But no, he actually gets around all of those South Carolina players as well and gets into the end zone for a touchdown. I was curious, so I wanted to go back and watch his tape, and his tape is really strong. I mean, these highlight plays are still absolutely there. And even with the Giants, you saw the splash plays. You saw things like this, what we expected to see, coming into the NFL with Toney, where the way this play is designed to work is it's zone coverage, but 2 of these routes are kind of designed to get Toney open. Like when this play begins, there's kind of 2 clear out routes. The 3rd route is Toney's. He's the one who I've circled now. And you see he's open a little bit right here. It's a 3rd down and 4. It's a bit of a tough situation. You see Daniel Jones' his throw is a bit behind Toney, but he's able to make the grab. And also watch how, despite the fact that his back is turned towards the defenders trying to tackle him, he's still shifty enough to get around them. He moves forward and honestly nearly ended up with a touchdown on that play. You certainly saw the flashes of Florida Kadarious Toney in New York. And he could make some of these really incredible plays too, like that aren't just these slot type plays. This one, where it's zone coverage, it's a one-on-one matchup on the outside. Daniel Jones is going to take the snap. He eventually looks towards Toney, throws off balance, so it's essentially just throwing up a jump ball. Toney, as you see, had some separation, but with this throw being behind, not really Jones' fault, he was under pressure, but still, the throw is behind. Toney is going to have to really work to try and make a play happen here. However, he does come back. He is able to make that catch and get the long completion. Again, you really saw flashes of Toney's success, but obviously the flashes were just that. They were flashes. He never got consistently good with the Giants, was consistently injured, and even in this game, which so far has been one of his career highlights, he got ejected from it for throwing a punch at the end of it. So it didn't exactly give too much confidence in the Giants, and they eventually decided to trade him for just a day 2 pick. But that brings us to this play. I think people kind of forget that he was actually really important in that Super Bowl run 2 years ago against the Eagles, really in the Super Bowl itself. He had a record for the longest punt return in a Super Bowl. He also had this play, which the Eagles are up 6 points at this point. It's a 3rd down and 3. So maybe the Chiefs go for it. I would assume they would go for it if they convert here, but still an opportunity to get, a 4th down stop and get off the field if you're the Eagles not having given up any points. That is where Kadarious Toney is, and this is going to be a play that we would see quite often, not just in terms of, and we actually saw this multiple times in this game. This was also the play that won the Chiefs the Super Bowl in overtime against San Francisco just last year. But watch how essentially it's Toney fakes as though he's in motion, and you see Slay is falling for this hook, line, and sinker. He is calling for another Eagles player to pick up Toney, not realizing Toney is not running in that direction. When Toney steps back over, outside the numbers, he makes the catch and gets into the end zone for a touchdown. So for the Chiefs, you can sit here and say Toney didn't live up to the hype with them, and that's 100% true, but I think they still feel very happy they made that trade in the first place because of what he gave them in this Super Bowl. And then last year, he was basically like the worst player in football. Like, he was just a mess. Like, it was bad. It was bad. There's no getting around it. It was tough. He had plays like this where he was dropping basically everything, which was an issue in college. He drops this one, it results in a pick six. He, of course, had some other famous missteps, including being offsides on the Travis Kelce lateral that caused Patrick Mahomes to have a meltdown on the sideline, and we all thought the Chiefs were dead. So what happened? Why did this end in such a disaster? I mean, even Toney's biggest critics weren't saying that he wasn't going to be successful at all at the NFL level. Most just thought he maybe wouldn't be an outside guy and would only be able to be successful in the slot. That was kind of the main criticism about him. I think there's several things at play. It's impossible to sit here and say that had nothing to do with the mental side of the game. Again, lining up offsides, all these dropped passes, which isn't exactly the mental side of the game, but it kind of is. To some degree, that is on the mental side. I also think it's fair to say that even in college, he did have his moments of real inconsistency. While the splash plays were certainly there, and I think you would kind of take the occasional game where he didn't play that well because you would get the game where he just looked uncoverable and you thought that's what you're getting at the NFL level. I think the one maybe biggest takeaway you could have from the Toney saga here in Kansas City and with the Giants is that maybe what you want to do is not pay too much attention to a player that has the great highlights. Highlights aren't everything. Highlights are great and certainly positives, but having some more consistency to your game is also something that I think is maybe more important for wide receivers, and something that, since I screwed up my evaluation of Toney thinking he was going to be awesome, have started to pay more attention in the future of. I also think it's fair to say it's just a weird scenario. Like, this is something I haven't really seen before, where he is someone who, like I said, has shown real flashes and really has struggled with consistency. In fact, if I'm a team that doesn't have a good receiving core and is in a full rebuild, like if I'm Carolina, for example, I wouldn't hate the idea of bringing him on board and seeing how things work. Now, you'd have to make sure he's not a locker room cancer, which people love to say guys are locker room cancers just based on like no evidence whatsoever. So who knows who is and who isn't? But definitely you'd have to have a meeting with him, say, okay, how what's going on with you? Why hasn't it worked out? And if you get the vibe it's his fault, then maybe you stay away. But in terms of on the field, like, you still do every now and then see these things that are like, oh yeah, that's why you were supposed to be really good. But again, I think that the headache around him just kind of makes it not worth it, and why the Chiefs towards the end of last year eventually said, you know what, we're just going to not even start you, which was probably the right strategy, as, he made a million mistakes last year. It cost him multiple games due to his mistakes, so definitely part of why that happened. But yeah, really an interesting career for him so far, and we'll see if there's any more chapters to it as it goes along. But yeah, those are my thoughts. What are yours? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from ya, and of course, as always, thanks for watching.